any best practices used by your clients to keep folks focused and motivated to keep on track with actions and OKRs? You know what? I'm going to start the party on this, but Jeff, you talk to a lot of people who come to us and say, oh my gosh, we just had a revolt because the organization hates OKRs, or they hate the strategic plan, or they hate the action plans that were put in place. Holy smokes. So want to just comment on that for a second? I think it's like a daily conversation, it feels like.
Yeah, it's a daily conversation. And then, a lot of leadership teams struggle with this kind of revolt from the staff level of, we don't want to do this. And we're struggling. Why is this important? And what I have found often is that when good strategy work cascades from the where are we going, what does success look like, and it's translated into specifically what are we doing, often I see the what's become a statement of the operational obvious. It's almost like I'm going to take from my job description and that's going to be my action items for the quarter. Over time, that becomes really mind-numbingly boring to report out on. And so I think and always my coaching is separate out the operational obvious in action items, keep the action items truly strategic, meaningful, impactful. It's a lot more interesting to share out, have ownership and accountability of actions that are strategic and meaningful, and not just a restatement of these are the things I would have done anyways with or without a strategic plan. And I think that is one way to keep teams focused and engaged and motivated in tracking, capturing, sharing performance. Keep those action items strategic, not operational.
Yeah, I just want to say, and maybe let's make a note to this. We should add we'll add a link to a downloadable we have, a little white paper we created, which is called, Is It Strategic? And I just want to say, let's just talk about this for a second. So one of the worst things I think for organizations or for leadership teams is to get caught in that trap of, is it like, oh, that's not strategic, that's operational. That's not strategic, that's operational. And we've all heard it, right? And it's almost like, it feels like it's an order of importance, that if something is not strategic, then it's not important. And, from where I sit, and I love anybody else to jump in on this too, but from where I sit, I find that kind of insulting. And it feels really, it's just insulting. And so, you're entering into a space with a leadership team and you're trying to create consensus and you're trying to create a forward path and you're trying to get everybody engaged and motivated and connected. And then you have this thing that's hanging over everybody, which is I don't know if the words that are going to come out of my mouth are smart enough. And so a suggestion I would make to everybody who's leading these processes is to one of the ground rules is we don't say that. We don't compare operational to strategic, because the world happens, our organizations happen in operations, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with operations. In fact, 80% of what we're doing should be improving the current. That's important. And so anyways, I just think just removing that stress from the conversation is so important. So that's just kind of one thing. But then the other thing that Jeff's talking about, and we see this a lot, I bet a lot of us on the call see this too, is how do we help guide our teams in not creating plans that are just the operational obvious, like Jeff said, because that's why people don't get motivated. That's why in 6 months' time, people are like, why are we running this process of organizational, OKR cycles and reporting on our progress and monthly and weekly reporting? And, this is dumb. And if you have a list of operational obvious that you start this with, you're going to end up in 6 months' time with people thinking that it's dumb and demotivated. So coming back around to all of that, I think really concretely and specifically making a deliberate decision in your planning to say, we are coming together to create the future. I'm using those words instead of the word strategic. And we're coming together to create the future, and we are talking about, you know, the initiatives and the KPIs that indicate if we're moving our organization forward. We're not coming together in a punitive manner to evaluate whether people are doing their jobs. So that's kind of for Anthony's question, you know, coming back around, you know, what starts well stays well. And we often see that demotivation happen because we don't have the right, we haven't articulated the future creating work that is intrinsically motivating. So that was pretty long-winded. I hope that was somewhat helpful. Matthew, you have something to add to it. And again, if anybody else has recommendations or thoughts, please, you know, raise your hand or come off mute and we'll know you've got something to add. Matthew, what tips do you have on this one?
Yeah, so I came up through the Agile project management for software teams, and there are kind of three key takeaways that relate to the core question here. One is that, I mean, similar to OKRs, Metric Monday, you know, pay attention to what you're doing, actually look at it and inspect it. The second is there's a specific technique I won't get into the weeds on of, all right, well, we've got everything on the board for what we're trying to accomplish. And the technique is called walking the board. And it's about, all right, well, here's what's happening. Here's what actions we're taking to move that towards the goal that we've already predefined. So it's about, I mean, OKRs, the conversations, feedback, you know, have that conversation about how are we moving towards this? And as part of that, it's also, well, what's standing in our way from actually accomplishing it? You know, it's one thing to say, oh, here's our strategic goal, here's the OKR to play towards. Like, cool, except I've got all this other stuff on my plate, so I don't have any time to think about this.
You know what? Let's talk about that for just a second. I think that's super important. So I just want to say that what another consideration, Matthew, to add to your point, is, you know, allowing the space and time in our monthly reviews and our quarterly reviews to do that little mini retro to talk about why are we not achieving the things that we've set forth for ourselves? Why are there things that are red and yellow? And let's allow for that forensic to happen. I think, and sorry, I'm passing the mic back to you to add on to any of that. I mean, again, we want to borrow those Agile principles. We're not always like using them. And so I think they really work in this case, even in a light manner, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's Agile is self-aware of an intrinsic problem, which is it's this huge array of various tools. And of course, there's a lot of, oh, here's the right way to do it. There is no right way to do it. But it's this wonderful toolkit that we can borrow from. And like you said, even just small retrospectives of, all right, hey, this past week, what happened? The single most important thing about retrospectives is that's an incredibly vulnerable space for everyone.
Oh, that's right.
If people are concerned, if there's a social threat to the participants in a retrospective of any level, where they might say something that is going to be bad for them, and even if it's just purely my peers don't respect me as much, that is going to have a massive chilling effect, and you're not going to get that open honesty that is necessary for overcoming some of the barriers that are inevitably going to come to pass.
That's great. All right, I'm going to sum this up. Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was
go ahead, Jeff.
I was just going to play off and reinforce what Matthew said, because the concept of capturing, reporting, sharing performance of supporting actions is not a static readout of, was I on target, off target, critical. It's not a performance readout. It is to shift the conversation. And I think it's important to understand, what is it we want to shift? What are we seeking? What are we looking for? What are we answering for in the purpose of these performance reviews? It's not a show up and throw up. is like we are isolating things that need to surface. We need to have a conversation. We need to shift that conversation and solve for the things that are going to naturally happen. And that just kind of plays off of what Matthew was saying. And the more we can allow people to understand that that will surface vulnerability, that something that is red and critical is not a weakness. Having a conversation about it is a strength. And as a leadership team, we need to allow ourselves to see that reds are not weaknesses. They're not punitive. It's an opportunity for strength and for us to grow as a team.
That's right. Okay, so I'm going to summarize for a second on this one. This is such a big one, everybody, because, you know, when your team gets demotivated, it references to the other question we have, which is a failed process, right? And then you're like totally hosed because nobody wants to do strategic planning anyways. So, you know, there's that. It's people want to do strategy work, but we don't necessarily want to be held accountable for that, right? Like that's never fun. And so if we get everybody organized around it, let's make sure that we don't lose the momentum at the beginning of a process because we did a couple of things that like kind of already were going to create demotivators. So here are things to just, again, something to take away yourselves right now to like make sure that your momentum stays. So one is that, again, like I said, top takeaway, don't compare strategic to operational. Use that, I think it's in chat, you guys, use that that white paper to just help reframe that conversation for your teams. Everybody, we all know this, everybody, but like that, starting the conversations with the where and the why, that we're like really running our monthly reviews with a big goal and the big direction we're trying to head off, whatever words you're using. And that, we know that, but just that kind of reinforces that point. And then I'm taking this on board personally myself on this right now, which is, hey, you know, we get demotivated when month after month an area is not performing. And if you own that area, it just feels terrible. So doing a small retro is really helpful to change that and change the conversation. And then where Jeff started, let's end with that, which is if you have action plans, so initiatives and performance measures that are the operational obvious, you're already going to demotivate people. So let's just jettison those from your core. I'm just going to call them action plans, but action plans. So, and Jason, you just added a really fantastic chat in a thought in chat. Do you want to come off mute and give some audio to that, to the written, if you're in a place that you can?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I had my camera off because I'm super casual today in my hoodie, but I guess that's really appropriate for my comment, right? So I'm not taking myself too serious in this call. I'm wearing a hoodie. Sorry about that. Not very professional of me.
No,
but
that's great.
That's how I like to kick off some of our sessions, especially if we know we're going to be talking like a really deep dive into sometimes potentially sensitive topics or anything where somebody might feel vulnerable or we're doing a strategy review, is just kick it off and put them at ease. I think that's one of the things that we forget to do as strategy leaders is we sit in these plans and we live in this world of strategic management, and some of the stuff we do is really serious, even in tourism, but we have to have fun with it, right? And if we don't have fun with it, then the people that we're helping along the way won't have fun with it. And if you're not having fun, then you will quickly lose motivation. So that's what I like to do, is just poke fun at myself. I'm an easy target. And then others I find won't feel as vulnerable in the process.
That's outstanding. Thanks, Jason. That's super great. And Chief Moore, you added as well. Anything you want to add to that in terms of it's in the same vein as what Jason just mentioned?
I think when you document and celebrate your success, in a way, it makes everyone feel that we're actually accomplishing something here. And especially when you get to the end of your strategic plan, you can look back and show everyone all the accomplishments and why they've been important, and compare historically where you were and where you're at now. I've used that technique with limited success, but I think it's important.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, because we're always just looking forward all the time. So that, you know, that really matters.